Hey everybody. Last year, as you've probably seen from the thumbnail, I read 80 books. And just saying that doesn't really capture the whole experience of what that really means. So, in this video, I want to talk about that experience. Specifically, breaking down the upsides and the downsides. And in doing so, maybe just offer you some insight so that maybe, you could change the way you approach this if you're going for such a big reading goal as well. One big upside about having such a big reading goal is that you feel freer to just read more widely. Like, it's just kind of true. After all, every single book that you read is going to be like a little +1 towards your goal, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it is. As long as you find it interesting and you just want to read it, then it's worth it, And the overall effect that it had on me was I was able to actually kind of like get fuller into things that I have always been interested in, but never really kind of like got deeper into it, or just like branch off to things that I knew would interest me, but I never really gave it that much time, if that makes any sense. Like this year I read more on economics, feminism, sociology, and science fiction, which typically I avoid because it's not always taken that seriously. But like, around this time I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter, let me just read it. I like the genre, so I insisted upon it anyways, and it added towards my overall goal. And I'm glad that was kind of like a thing that was going on, that I was like branching out and reading more widely, because it feels like such a necessity when you're going towards such a big goal. Like I bet most people have heard this in other videos, but I'm just gonna say it again, I don't care. Reading multiple books at once is just a way better experience overall. Like typically I would read maybe like at least 3 to 4 books at the same time. And that's just because you get bored of just one book. Like it could be like the most fascinating thing I've ever read, but it doesn't matter. Like eventually it just gets boring. Like it's a little bit too much of the same thing. And just switching off to other books was always a big help. Especially if I was like reading something very like critical, like very like, I don't know, like just something in the realm of theory. Like let's say like Karl Marx or something, right? If I was reading that, even though I'd appreciate the insights that he was providing, it was too boring. I feel like I was like, reading for school or something. So just having like a play to read was a really nice way to like balance things out. I wouldn't have experienced such a variety of books though if I didn't decide to go for such a big goal. So that's definitely one big upside that I noticed. Like one thing that I really do consider a big upside of this whole reading goal was I feel like I had to get more disciplined. And of course that's just kind of how it is, right? The more challenging the goal, the more disciplined a person has to be to achieve that goal. In my case, I just did the same thing every morning. Would write down the books that I was interested in, what pages I was going to read, and then in parentheses have like the total number of pages, and then just like throughout the day make sure I reach that goal, which was really easy when I just blocked out time on my calendar for it. And then in doing this, I spent like just hours sitting there reading, because that's just how it is, right? You have to just do it. I sound like I'm like a commercial, oh my god, no. But whatever. You just have to sit down and do it and like actually get it done. And when it came to this kind of goal, I feel like I had to do that. There is no like shortcut to it. So this overall discipline was kind of established because of that, and I'm actually really happy about that. And to me, those are all those upsides. Now I'm gonna talk about the downsides. And one downside that I really need to fix in this year coming up is I felt a lot of stress when reading so much, mostly because I would be too like critical, right? Like I was very aware of what time it was. So it's like if I had read for like an hour and I only read like 20 pages, I'm like, like the amount of self-hatred in that moment was pretty real. And like I felt like I started bouncing my leg and trying to like just kind of skim through stuff sometimes, just go a little faster, and in doing so, yeah, it wasn't the best experience. That's really the only thing I can say about that. It was kind of grueling sometimes, and I hated it. Like I felt awful. And what was worse too is that I would have to like refocus, right? Like my attention has started going on my own well-being versus where the attention should have been, which is on the books, right? Like I was just trying to stay calm and like, you know, I would have to go like, you know, take a nap or something, like just like kind of like think of something else. And I was just wasting my own time. Like I was taking it like, I was very clearly like taking the goal too seriously. And that's definitely like a fault. And another big downside to me was that sometimes I avoided some books. I know earlier I said that I felt like it was great to have this reading goal because I could read more widely. This is the exception. If I felt like the book was too dense and too hard, I just put it aside. Like I didn't want to deal with it. Because really, think about the math that's going on. If I want to get there by reading 80 pages per day, because on average each book is around 300 pages, then something like 500 pages or more for one book is throwing me off. Like if a book was like, let's just say it was 900, just to make things easy. If it was 900 pages, it didn't feel like it was worth reading. Because if I read those 900 pages, then those 900 pages could have gone to 3 books instead of just one. And that's pretty awful. Like think of the ramifications of that. That means that I somehow found a way to undervalue the work of someone like Robert Lifton. Like that doesn't make sense. Robert J. Lifton is brilliant and he is worth reading. Like it is, I mean that's like an understatement. Like he is probably like he is the guy to read when it comes to like psychology and thought reform, right? But in my scenario, having this big reading goal, it felt kind of like a waste. And that was a big downside. Like there's definitely some things that I wanted to read where it's like I just didn't. But even with that big downside, which I think is the biggest downside, I'm actually going to increase my reading goal this year. I'm going to try to read 100 books. And the reason why I'm going to increase my goal is because there is one prevailing upside. And that is I got to see my potential. Like I, honest to God, did not know that reading 80 books was possible for me within a year. Like that seemed just out of my reach completely. And yet I did it. You know, like I could show you which books I read, right? Like I've definitely done it. So I'm just gonna try to remember that when it comes to reading denser books. Like maybe they won't hold me back, right? Maybe I will actually be able to get through them and still get to my goal. But I won't really know that until I actually try. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go for the 100 pages. I mean 100 pages. What? Go for the 100 books while also reading some more dense material. I already have a list of books that I have in mind. I'm just gonna put in a screen. I don't remember which ones. I think it's like one work by Karl Marx and then The Second Sex, something by Robert J. Lifton. I can't remember the other two right now, but either way, it's gonna be on the screen. And those books are pretty long. I think the longest one there probably is around 800 to 1,000 pages long. So it's gonna be a task. But either way, I'm hopeful that I'm actually gonna be able to do it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Have a good one.